welcome to UC Today. I'm Susie Harrison, Senior Content Editor, and today I'm delighted to be joined by Safe Ahmed, who is co-founder and CEO of SCB Global. So thank you for joining me, Safe.
Thank you for having me.
So what do you think is coming next in Microsoft Teams? And from your conversations with customers, what do you think businesses want from Microsoft next?
This journey with Teams has been at least 6 to 7 years. Most people would have interacted with Teams in the past few years, COVID and post-COVID. But what we're seeing is people want a bit more, quote unquote, AI capabilities. People want to see a bit more automation or additional help within the Teams application. So things like Copilot and integration with Copilot, that I think is going to be of great help to potential customers and also users as well.
Definitely. And I know we'll come on to Copilot in a minute. But given that companies, especially large ones, are really requiring employees to come back into the office, how do you think collaboration technology will develop to manage those colleagues that are having to work in offices, those that are still hybrid? What do you think's next in that regard?
Many years ago, we said most of the corporations, most of the users out there will have some form of hybrid working. Yes, there are many people who will go back to the office, which is, of course, that's what will happen. That's what the company wants to do. But aside from their colleagues, some of them being hybrid, which it would be very difficult for them not to be, because it's impossible that all of a sudden you're going to bring everybody back to the office. Not everyone's going to be able to do it. Not everybody wants to do it. And in most cases, it's not necessary. Again, I'm not trying to say what's good or bad for a company out there. So given that some people will be in the office and some people will be hybrid, it's also their customers and their suppliers who are also going to be in a similar position where not everybody's going to go back to the office how it was back in the 80s. That's just not going to happen. We're not going back to the 80s. We're not going back to the ISDN days where, sure, we've got SIP and whatever, but it's just not going to happen that everyone is going to be back in the office. I'm hybrid myself, and many people, I think, prefer that way of working, even though there is push from certain industries and certain companies, and they may have it their way, which is perfectly fine if it works for them. I think at least 2/3 of the companies out there will accept some form of hybrid working. So given that situation, I can't see any change or any changes needed to accommodate the future of office working, because we're not going back to the 80s.
It's interesting that the pandemic's basically changed our culture, hasn't it now, our working culture?
Yeah. And you know what, of course, during the pandemic, I think 99% of the people were working from home at one stage anyway. And that pretty much happened for most of the world. And I fully understand why certain corporations, they want majority of the workforce back in the office. Things like training and new staff and new hiring and also teamwork, sometimes it needs to be in person. Having said that, for everybody to be in the office for 5 days a week, that I just can't see happening, even though that may be the news right now. But for it to happen in reality, I'm not sure about that. So I can't see that being a realistic topic in 2 or 3 years' time, whereby, we've gone back to how it was 10 years ago, where vast majority of people were in the office. And, I remember even 10 years ago, I myself, I relied on emails on mobiles. I relied on some of the phone calls coming in on the mobiles, and that gave us some mobility. Mobility is different from people actually working and doing their 100% of their daily functions on a platform that is remote, which is something that Teams brings, whereby I can do Excel sheets, I can do Word, I can do email, I can talk to somebody, I can video conference somebody, I can message somebody. All of that is required in a typical day's work for majority of people, So 10 years ago, we couldn't do that. just because we had mobile on our phones and we could take a mobile phone call. That's only part of the collaboration as we have it today. There are many aspects of collaboration, such as sharing files and sharing documents and working on live documents and live Excel sheets. Those things can happen today that make remote working or hybrid working possible. So these are the things that we need to look into before we think that somehow shifting everyone back in the office is just going to solve some sort of problem. I don't think it will.
Yeah, and I think the fact is that technology has risen to meet that hybrid, workforce that was necessitated by the pandemic. So, yeah, like where's the compulsion for people to go back in? I agree.
Yeah.
But in terms of some employees that are frontline workers, people like IT support, warehouse workers that are physically in a workspace now and they're not actually sitting at a desk. How can technology help those kind of workers, do you think?
Yeah, we have actually a solution for frontline workers, people who may operate out of an office, but they have to go to the field, they have to go and visit people to function their everyday work. We have a SIM, which is the eSIM, that actually fully integrates with Teams. So instead of that frontline worker having a contract from a mobile supplier, mobile phone supplier, and having Teams separately, we can actually incorporate their mobility into Teams so that they only have one number. So they could have a landline number fully incorporated into their SIM on the eSIM, and they could continue receiving the data packets, receiving Teams calls on 2G if that's what is sometimes going to happen. And therefore, we're trying to remove the multiple lines and multiple ways of communication for those frontline workers.
Interesting. Well, we look forward to hearing more about that. We mentioned Copilot earlier, and I know AI Copilot are huge topics on our website. Can you tell us about what you think the future for AI and Copilot holds?
Yeah, I've said a few things about it previously, and I think my views are unchanged. We're in the first 1.1 phase of AI and Copilot and things to do with automation and machine learning and machine decision making. It's a bit like how the first iPhone came out back in 2006 and 7, where you had essentially apps that were just web pages that were called apps. And over the 20 years or so, we're now on 4th, 5th generation of that mobile gadget, mobile device. I'm not saying, oh, it's iPhone 16 or whatever it is. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the generation. Just because you got iPhone 1, 2, 3, that could have been the first generation. iPhone 7, 8, 9, 10 could be the next generation, meaning it's not bringing anything new. So I think for the next 20 years, 25 years, the Copilot or the AI, the capabilities will be the real capability that we will see in due course. Today is mostly an introduction to AI. It's an introduction to potentially what could happen around the corner in the next 5, 6 years. But the reality is what it really could do in 20 years, I don't think anybody understands today. We are guessing. We are contemplating. It's a bit like back in 2006. We couldn't really guess where this iPhone was going. We can see it today, but of course, that's 20 years on. Almost 20 years on. So we have to really think hard how this AI is going to go. I think it will automate a lot of work function for a lot of people. Sure, it's not going to replace everybody. It cannot replace everybody, but a lot of people's work functions will be replaced. So therefore, the workforce, human workforce interaction with either people or machine will be limited or narrower because the other parts of the interaction is done by the machine, which again wouldn't have that capability today. I don't think we understand what capability it will have in 15, 20 years time, the generation 4, the generation 5 of the AI, really what it can do. So in some ways it's scary as to what it can do, but that's a typical human reaction. We get scared of things that we don't know, we don't understand. Should we be scared? No is the answer, because we should be in charge of what's going to happen around the corner in 5, 10, 15, 20 years time. And as long as people are in charge, it's fine. If people are not in charge in 25 years time, that's scary. So hopefully we don't get there.
And what's coming next from SCB Global?
There's very interesting stuff that we're going to do, especially with regards to calling within Teams and international calling. So we're about to launch at the end of this month 70 countries that we can allow, or we will allow for calling for free if the customer meets a certain threshold. The reason why is to take out the difficulties and bureaucracies of expanding the Teams user base in multiple countries and jurisdictions, which can be difficult. So we're about to remove that, and that's a big thing for us.
Well, thank you so much for joining me, Safe. And thank you to our viewers for watching. And if you enjoyed this conversation, please do like and subscribe to our channel for more video updates as they come. And please do keep an eye on newsseatoday.com for more stories like these. Until next time, thank you very much for watching.
Thank you.